Alibi on ice. State Trooper Mark Holliday looked down at the body stretched in the snow at his feet. The man had evidently been skiing down a treacherous hairpin turn. Had momentarily lost control of his skis and had crashed head-on into the gnarled old tree which poked its tremendous girth up out of the snow and ice around it. I can't imagine how in the world it could have happened, mumbled the giant of a man standing at the trooper's elbow. This turn on the ski slope has a bad reputation, I know, but still. He claimed to be an expert skier. Awful bad accident. Trooper Holliday nodded almost unconsciously to the tall man's speech. Funny thing, he mused. An expert skier, this Jack Benson says. And yet the man can't stop himself short of such an obvious obstacle at this old tree. I just happened to be looking out of the window of the inn when I saw this guy go scurrying down the hill, Big Jack Benson was saying, his large St. Bernard's eyes roving over the landscape. Sure happens sudden, an awful tragedy, accident like this. Trooper Holliday looked down at the dead man. His eyes roved over the figure, moved onto the trunk of the tree, and then crossed back to the spot where the towering Jack Benson stood, his feet stamping the snow to keep his toes warm. You do much skiing, Benson? Asked Holliday. See other accents like this one in all the time you own that inn up there on the hill? Benson's eyes squinted at the state trooper before he answered. Can't say as I have, officer. First time like this. Trooper Holliday rubbed his chin. Let his hand rest momentarily under his coat. When he brought it out, the fingers were gripped tight around his revolver. You better put your hands up, Benson. Got a trip to make to headquarters. Benson started to sputter his innocence, but one look from the trooper quieted him. Couple of things don't look like accidents to me. The bark of the tree where the victim was supposed to crash, for instance, said the trooper. If you look closely, you'll find it isn't even peeled. And yet the man was supposed to hit it hard enough to crack his skull. And his clothing got too much on him, especially for an expert skier. But what points the finger at you, said the trooper, as he steered Benson down the snow-covered hillside, are those skis. The man on the ground is less than 5.5 feet tall. And those skis are long enough for a giant like you. Telltale marks. Mr. Corning picked up the telephone and called the police station. While he held the phone, waiting for the connection to be made, he let his eye rove around the room. He could breathe a little more easily now. He thought to himself, his eyes resting for a moment on the trophy case with the metal plate screwed to its top. Matthew Corning, curator, was inscribed in black on the bronze strip. "Is this the police station?" he asked the voice on the other end of the line. It was Matthew Corning, curator over at the Midtown Museum and Zoo. "I'm afraid there's been a little trouble over here. I think we'll need your assistance." Corning reached across the desk as he spoke and picked up a vial which contained oily liquid. He cleared his throat, rolled the vial between his fingers. Trouble took place just 10 minutes ago, over in the snake cage. A man who once worked here wandered in, evidently poked around, and now we've got a corpse on our hands. It had gone off precisely as he planned. Corning thought to himself as he dropped the vial into his coat pocket. That Malcolm Smith had come back today as he had promised. All said to tell the authorities about that bit of trouble Corning had with the law years before. Unless, of course, Corning could make it worth his while to be quiet about the episode. And so he had made preparations to welcome Smith. Something in the way of a farewell party, he thought to himself with a chuckle. The snakes, they had been the easiest way out of the difficulty. Who could question the death of a man who had stumbled into a cage full of poisonous serpents? The detective stared down at the body of the man which the zoo attendants had dragged out of the snake cage. The clothing around the shoulders was torn and shred, and deep in the man's throat were 2 tiny punctures, which were beginning to turn bluish. Nasty thing, thought the detective, to be killed that way by the bite of a poisonous snake. He stared closer to the corpse, and then he straightened out, his pencil point tapping against the glass top of the curator's desk. "Anybody else around when you heard the noise from the cage?" asked Corning. "Nobody that I know of," Corning answered, his fingertips rubbing against the vial in his coat pocket. "I guess we were alone here. Just the 2 of us. And a cage full of snakes." "Those marks are curious," the detective said, his pencil tapping. "I remember reading something recently about snakes. Seems they very rarely will bite a man above the knee. Certainly not as high up as the throat. And the reason is simple. No snake is large enough to arch its back and reach much higher than a hoof than 1.5 feet off the ground. Corning gulped. You could feel his palm going moist against the vial in his pocket. Those punctures undoubtedly contained snake venom, the detective was saying, but Corning could no longer hear him very distinctly. But I don't think they were administered by a snake's fangs. Perhaps you could tell us how they were administered, Mr. Corning, down at headquarters?